The warning came at midnight across every communication channel in the galaxy. The devouring swarm had awakened from its 1,000-year sleep. Every species that could run began running immediately. Ships launched from 100 worlds, carrying billions of creatures toward the distant safe zones beyond the galactic rim. Ambassador Alara Chun stood on the observation deck of Galactic Station 12, watching the exodus unfold before her eyes. Massive colony ships belonging to the Volanthi, a species known throughout the galaxy for their peaceful nature and advanced meditation techniques, were the first to leave. Their crystalline vessels caught the starlight as they accelerated away from the station. The Volanthi had always spoken about universal harmony and the brotherhood of all sentient beings. They had given speeches about unity at every Galactic Council meeting for 300 years. Now they were gone. They had not offered a single seat on their ships to anyone else, not to the humans, not to any other species. They simply left. The Melodians followed next. Their musical language had once moved entire civilizations to tears. Their philosophy of nonviolence was taught in schools across 1,000 worlds. They believed that all conflicts could be resolved through understanding and compassion. Their departure was swift and silent. They did not even say goodbye. Alara watched as the thinking clouds, beings of pure consciousness who floated through space contemplating the nature of existence, simply vanished from their meditation platforms. They had always claimed to value all life equally. They had written poetry about the sacred connection between all thinking beings. Now they had abandoned everyone without a second thought. One by one, the peaceful races departed. The herbivorous Granthi, who had never harmed another creature in their million-year history. The gentle whisper folk, who communicated through soft touches and kind thoughts. The enlightened seers of Valen, who claimed to understand the universe better than anyone else. All of them ran. All of them left the weaker species behind. Humanity had no ships fast enough to escape. Earth's fleet was old and small. The faster-than-light engines humanity used were considered primitive by galactic standards. When humans had first joined the galactic community, the peaceful races had smiled at them with condescension. They had called humans young and barbaric. They had lectured humans about leaving behind their violent history. They had refused to share their advanced technology, saying that humans needed to earn it through spiritual growth. Now those same peaceful races were nowhere to be found. They had taken their advanced ships and left everyone else to die. Alara was preparing to return to Earth when her communication device activated. A face appeared on the screen that made her step backward in surprise. It was a Crethani. The Crethani were warriors. Their entire civilization was built around combat and honor in battle. The peaceful races had always warned humans to stay away from them. They were dangerous. The peaceful ones had said. They were brutal. They were everything that civilized beings should not be. The Crethani warrior on the screen had scars across his scaled face. His eyes were the color of burning coal. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough. Human ambassador. The Crethani fleet will reach your station in 6 hours. We are offering transport to all remaining species. Our home world is heavily defended. The swarm will not breach our walls. You are welcome to shelter with us. Alara could not find words. The Crethani had no reason to help humans. The two species had barely interacted. Humans had followed the advice of the peaceful races and kept their distance from the warrior civilizations. Why? She finally asked. The Crethani warrior made a sound that might have been a laugh. Because we do not run from those who need us. That is the difference between us and the enlightened ones who have abandoned you. 6 hours later, the Crethani fleet arrived. They were not alone. The Bruchari came with them, another warrior race that the peaceful species had always shunned. The Bruchari were giant insectoid beings who fought with 4 arms and moved with terrifying speed. Behind them came the Thornburn, plant-like creatures covered in poisonous spines who had been expelled from the Galactic Council for refusing to renounce violence entirely. Every violent race in the galaxy had come. They brought their warships and their weapons and their fierce determination. They were not running from the swarm. They were preparing to fight it. The Crethany commander introduced himself as General Vorath. He stood 8 feet tall and carried a blade that looked older than human civilization. He met with Alara in the station's command center. "We have been watching your species," Vorath said. "When you first arrived in the galactic community, we were curious. You have violence in your blood, but you also have great compassion. You protect your weak. You fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. The peaceful races called you primitive. We call you kindred spirits." "I do not understand," Alara said. "Everyone told us that the warrior races were dangerous, that you valued only destruction." Vorath's scarred face showed something that looked almost like sadness. "The peaceful races fear us because we remind them of what they truly are. They claim to value all life, but when danger comes, they abandon the helpless. They speak of unity, but they share nothing with those they consider lesser. They have convinced themselves that their cowardice is wisdom. They have dressed up their selfishness in beautiful words." Over the next several weeks, the warrior races worked together to evacuate the abandoned species. The Crethini used their massive cargo vessels to transport millions of refugees. The Bracari provided food from their agricultural worlds. The Thornburn created medicines from their own bodies to heal the sick and injured. Humanity joined the effort. Human doctors worked beside Bracari healers. Human engineers helped repair damaged ships. Human soldiers stood guard alongside Crethany warriors. The two species discovered that they had much in common. Both valued loyalty. Both protected their families fiercely. Both believed that strength existed to serve those who had none. The devouring swarm arrived 3 months later. It was everything the legends had claimed. A living darkness that consumed entire planets. A hunger without end that swept across star systems like a tide of death. The peaceful races had been right to fear it, but they had been wrong to believe that running was the only option. General Vorath led the combined fleet into battle. Crethany warships formed the front line, their weapons blazing with ancient fire. Bracari fighters swarmed around the larger vessels, striking at weak points with surgical precision. Thornburn vessels released clouds of spores that infected and destroyed swarm organisms from within. And among them, fighting side by side with their new allies, were the human warships. They were not the most advanced vessels in the fleet. Their weapons were not the most powerful. But they fought with a fury that surprised even the Crethany. Human captains refused to retreat even when their ships were burning. Human soldiers boarded swarm vessels and fought in the corridors until no enemy remained standing. The battle lasted for 7 days. Millions died. Entire fleets were reduced to debris. But on the 8th day, the swarm broke. For the first time in recorded history, it retreated. The violent races had done what the peaceful ones had believed impossible. They had fought back and won. When the fighting ended, Alara found General Vorath standing among the wreckage of his command ship. He had lost an arm in the battle. His face was covered in fresh wounds, but he was smiling. "Your people fought well," he said to Alara. "Better than we expected. You have earned the respect of the Crethany." "We learned from you," Alara replied. Vorath shook his head. "No, you already had it within you. The peaceful races tried to teach you that violence is always wrong. They tried to make you ashamed of your nature. But violence is not evil. It is a tool. It can protect as easily as it can destroy. The difference lies in the heart of those who wield it." In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The peaceful races eventually returned, but they found a different universe waiting for them. The species they had abandoned had formed new alliances. The Crethany and humans had become close allies. The Bracari and Thornburn had opened their worlds to refugees. A new federation had risen, one that valued actions over words. The peaceful races asked to join this federation. They offered their advanced technology and their ancient wisdom. But the survivors remembered how quickly that wisdom had been forgotten when danger came. Trust had to be earned through deeds, not purchased with gifts. Humanity's place in the galaxy was secure now. They were not the most powerful species, but they were respected. They had proven that they could fight when necessary and show mercy when it was safe to do so. They had shown that true strength was not about avoiding all conflict, but about choosing which battles were worth fighting. Ambassador Alara became one of the most important figures in the new Federation. She worked to build bridges between former enemies and to create a community that actually lived by the values the peaceful races had only pretended to hold. She often thought about those early days when humanity had been alone and afraid, when the enlightened ones had looked down at them with pity. She remembered how the violent ones had been the first to extend a hand when everything seemed lost. Years later, she gave a speech at the Federation Assembly. Representatives from 100 species listened as she spoke about the lessons humanity had learned. Before the swarm came, she said, we believed that peace meant the absence of violence. We thought that the gentle voices spoke the deepest truths. We were wrong. Peace is not weakness dressed in pretty clothes. Peace is strength that chooses not to harm. The races that called themselves peaceful ran when we needed them. The races that embraced their violent nature stood and fought. They protected strangers because they believed it was right, not because it was safe. That is the lesson we must never forget. Judge others by what they do when the cost is high, not by what they say when the cost is nothing. The galaxy had learned a hard truth. Words without actions are empty. Philosophy without courage is cowardice. And sometimes, the ones everyone calls dangerous are the only ones brave enough to offer shelter when the storm arrives.